Good morning, and welcome to our student-led interview with candidate Julie Joseph, who is running for the Wayzata School Board. My name is Ankita Kumar, and I'm here today with our student interviewers, Samuela, Sean, and Alicia. Together, we're a part of Wayzata School Board Spotlight, a student initiative created to improve voter turnout, strengthen community education about the upcoming Wayzata School Board election, and advocate for student representation on the school board. Here's how today's interview will work. Each student interviewer will ask a set of pre-written questions. The candidate will respond, and then the students will have a chance to engage in a short discussion. To keep things moving, each question, candidate response, and discussion will be limited to about 3 to 5 minutes total. I'll be keeping track of time, and I'll hold up a sign when there's 1 minute remaining. If we go over, I will step in and cut off the discussion so we can cover everything on our agenda. At the end, we'll close with questions submitted live by the community on our Instagram and Facebook. Our goal is to create a conversation where students and the community can learn more about each candidate in a fair and engaging way. Thank you, Julie Joseph, for joining us today. Let's begin. Student 1 will begin with their first set of questions on visions and priorities.
What inspired you to run for the Wayzata School Board, and what perspective do you hope to add in the district decision making?
Wonderful question. First of all, thank you all for welcoming me here. It's an honor and a privilege to be a part of this, and also running for the school board. For me, this decision is not spurred by a single event or a single moment in my life. I would say it's been an amalgamation of experiences over the course of my life that have actually led me to this decision. My mom was a teacher. She taught English and science, and because of my dad's job, we moved around the country growing up, and so she taught right from kindergarten to 12th grade. So I had witnessed firsthand what does a daily day look like in the life of a teacher. And in addition to that, my dad, who also had a full-time job, he used to tutor students in mathematics because he strongly believed that education is the foundation, on which you can build a successful life. I mean, that's how he established himself. And so that was how I started out in life. And then growing up, my teachers transformed my life. They transformed my thinking. And it was not just academics. I want to be clear about that. I think it's academics, the way of thinking, and how I grew up as a well-rounded individual with a strong sense of civic responsibility. And when we moved to the Wayzata School District about, I want to say 14 and a half years ago, when my older son was starting kindergarten, the experiences that both of our boys have had in this community, in this school district, has kind of, reinforced my belief in what public education does for students, right? It sets the foundation for what could be the society of tomorrow. And in addition to that, I have been a lifelong volunteer. I have been in corporate America for the last 15 years. And so I think all of these experiences, they just have formed my thoughts and opinions about how I should be participating in the society. And that has been one of the reasons why I want to run for the school board. And I think your second part of the question was, what perspectives do I bring to this? As I mentioned, I grew up in a family where education was the very foundation. I was shaped by my teachers, and I have seen the same thing happen for both my boys. My older one, who went from being a shy and introverted child to being a really confident person. I think even establishing initiatives like cashology at the high school with his friends, which has taken off now, and my younger son too, who teachers have pushed him, to explore his various interests, and even establish some clubs, and he's now stepping into Wayzata High. So I think with all of these experiences, I come to the board with a parent's heart, a leader's focus, and a strong passion for, serving the community, and championing equity.
It's a really comprehensive response. Thank you. Do you guys have any follow-ups for that?
Where do you see Wayzata in the next 5 to 10 years?
Awesome. I actually have a copy that I probably wanted to share with you. How many of you know where do we stand with respect to rankings, with respect to the best school district in Minnesota, best school district with respect to athletes, and best places to teach in America? Any idea? Oh, sorry, in Minnesota. We are actually number 1, 2, 3 in all those categories. But when we take this across America, with respect to the best school district, we are number 43. Best school district for athletes, we are number 65. And best places to teach in America, we are actually number 175. Again, these are not bad numbers, but I think I want us as a school district to push ourselves and see what could we be doing better. We really have a strong foundation. What can we be doing more of so that we can go to the top rank, up to the top tier across the nation? Again, I'm not at all undermining what we've done so far, but how do we push ourselves where we truly, get to a place where we are able to realize that the vision that the school district has, which is, ensuring that every single student in our school district is reaching their full potential. And so that is where I would see our school district marching towards in the next 5 years.
What are some of your plans to push on
that? I think, again, as I mentioned, there are really some strong programs that we have in terms of how do we advance equity, how do we strengthen our teachers, and how do we strengthen the well-being of our students. What I would like to do is how do we double down on some of those initiatives? How do we engage our parents and the community more? Because again, all of this cannot happen with just limited participation. And how do we advocate for more funding to help accelerate some of these programs?
Do you guys have any personal experiences that might relate to anything that you said so far?
When I was moving here, I came from Oregon and I lived there for 13 years and I came here a couple months ago. We were looking for places to move in Minnesota and my dad's job isn't near here. So we decided to come to Wayzata because we knew it was a good school. And I think if we have a good board member, then it can be more appealing to people that are moving here or new students so they won't feel scared. I think that's really that's a good thing.
Yeah. I think we had a similar experience. We came to this district so that our kids could have similar experiences. And that's where I keep reiterating, right? We already have a very strong foundation. We are known for the programs we have, the culture that we have, and we are ranked 1, 2, or 3 the categories that I called out earlier in Minnesota. But what can we do to push ourselves? How do we excel across all these categories? How do we make sure we are offering the most equitable and best environment for all of our students, not just for a section of our students? And I know that is the mission of our school district, but how do we invest more energy and accelerate some of the things that we're already doing?
I actually have a follow-up question that I found generates some interesting responses. Where do you see the difference between equity and equality in the school district, and where do you think one would be used over the others?
Yeah, it's an interesting question and something that I've been passionate about, I would say throughout my life, and more so in the last couple of years, I've been involved in some of the equity-related initiatives outside, at work as well. Equality, and I'll give an example that probably that will resonate with all of you. If I were to offer you a lunch of peanut butter, sandwich, milk, and an apple, it's a wholesome, nutritious meal. But let's say, Alicia, you have peanut allergy. Sean, you are lactose intolerant. And maybe, say, well, let's say if you don't have access to, nutritious meals throughout the day, now you three are not coming from this, same level. And so each individual has a different requirement. And so if I were to offer the same lunch to all three of you, you cannot get nutrition that you need because you're allergic to peanut butter. You cannot get your own nutrition because you're lactose intolerant. And Sammy, maybe the food that is being offered to everyone, that might not be enough for you to meet the needs, for an entire day. And so that's where I think the equalities, when the same offering is made to, all students or all individuals. Equity is when I understand what needs you have and cater to that specific need. And so in this case, Alicia, I would probably have a lunch option for you that does not, have any peanut butter or, any other nut-related items that you might be allergic to. For Sean, it might be something that's dairy-free. And then for Samuela, something that is more maybe protein-rich and is more, a more balanced meal for what your needs are. And so that's where the difference is between equity and equality. And I think sometimes people lose sight of what that means.
Great. Thank you for that response. Let's move on to the last question in your section.
If elected, what would be your top priorities for our district?
All right. I think as I think about the priorities for the school district, I personally think that it is all centered around what is best for the student. Now, when I say that, we have to understand that we cannot do things for the student without the support of our teachers, the parents, and the community. And so considering all of this, you would probably find on my website, the way I think about my priorities are SAFE priorities. SAFE is an acronym. Student first, advancing teachers, fostering equity and collaboration, and engaging our community and stewardship. What do I mean by that? As I said, student is the center of all the decisions that we will have to be making as a board. When I talk about student first, it's about how can we nurture their well-being? How can we fuel their growth? How do we make sure they are safe? I think given what happened the past 2 days, that's top of mind for everyone, right? And when I talk about safety, it's just not physical safety. It is physical safety, mental safety, cyber safety, and making sure students have access to nutritious meals. So it's safety and well-being of students all around. The second priority, as I mentioned, is teachers. Focusing on students without focusing on teachers, it's not going to, get us anywhere. We have to make sure our teachers are supported. They have access to all the resources, that allows them to be well prepared and they feel empowered. We have to make sure that our teachers are not burnt out. Only when you have teachers whose well-being is taken care of are you going to have students that are inspired by what their teachers have to offer. And then the third one, as I mentioned, is fostering equity and collaboration. And as we talked about in the previous question, while I was trying to answer the previous question, equity is very, very important. The needs of every student is unique depending on where they come from, what kind of a setting, they grew up in. And so it's important that we acknowledge that we need to understand what are the needs of our students and cater or develop our programs that cater to the needs of our students. And the last one, as I mentioned, is community engagement and stewardship. We have to ensure that as we are, working on all of these priorities, that the community is engaged, the families are engaged, and that we do it in a fiscally or financially responsible way.
When you talk about financial, or as you know, like our school debt, what are some ways you are gonna like address school debt and the challenges that our school is facing currently?
Yeah, I don't have all of the details around what are the strategies that are being, pursued right now. But what I will say is, in general, I think we have to start looking at creative ways of how can we become, more financially stable. I don't know if Wayzata has an alumni network. Maybe that's one way where we tap into like how colleges do. Could we potentially have, could we build out an alumni network and see how could they contribute to, to our school district? I'm sure like Wayzata students take great pride, in having grown up in this schooling system. I don't know if that's an option, but if yes, I would like to see that's something that we can pursue. I would love to see how could we engage more of our local businesses to participate engage and ensuring that we are getting enough financial support and that we don't necessarily rely just on federal, state, and city funding. Having said that, I also want to make sure that while we are exploring all of these options, that we continue to advocate at these various levels, federal, state, and city levels, to see how can we get additional support. So I would say that we will have to adopt a multi-pronged approach to see how can we become more financially stable.
Great. Well, with that, let's move on to our second set of questions on student experience and equity.
So how familiar are you with our school's like current priorities, opportunities, and what are some like areas that you want to see growth in?
Yeah, I do know that this, as I think about the school priorities based on, I think, all of the school board meetings and maybe even some content on the website, that we're focused on equitable experiences for our students. We are focused on well-being of students and teachers, and we are also focused on how do we manage growth, right? And how do we manage capacities? Your question was specifically focused on equity, right?
Yeah, just like
Opportunities. I know the school district is doing a fabulous job in trying to pursue different programs to see how can we make the experiences more equitable for our students. But while we're trying to do that, I feel like we are at odds with that goal when our classes are, the student teacher ratio is not what it should be. It might be one thing to have all these programs, but if we do not have the foundations right to support that program, it will just end up being a checkbox that we do have an equity program in place, that we have all these multiple efforts, but we don't necessarily have the foundations to support these various initiatives. And so I think foundationally, what we could be doing more is also, as we are trying to address, all these programs that are focused on equity, how do we ensure that we are creating the right environment for these programs to be successful?
So how are some ways you like balance like academic rigor and like student well-being?
I don't know if they are necessarily mutually exclusive. I think in my mind, those two go hand in hand. Student well-being, in my mind, is a non-negotiable, right? Especially when we're in a public education system, I feel like that is what we need to ensure. And as I mentioned, when I talk about well-being, it is physical well-being, mental well-being, emotional well-being, and cyber safety. Now, when I think about academic rigor, again, it goes back to, it's not one size fits all. there are students, depending on their capacity, that have to be challenged more and they can be pushed more. And we have to do everything in our capacity to do whatever we need to unlock the full potential of the student. Now, what might be applicable to you may not be applicable to her. And so that's where I want to make sure that we're not necessarily saying that academic rigor is at the expense of, student well-being.
So let me interject.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any experiences where you feel like you've compromised your well-being for your academic rigor?
Yeah, I feel like there has been moments. And
Okay. Tell me more.
like about the moments.
Yeah.
Yes.
You don't have to give names or anything. Don't go into specifics, but like, what are those moments?
Sometimes like, like sometimes when you're like being pushed more, I feel like there's not a like big support system, and we
Got
could work on that in our school for like working on like, especially like my friend or someone, like there has been people who like come and talk to me about how their like well-being's not being like not pursued in our school building as much, or like not a person that you can go directly and talk to them. So maybe like that'd be like the biggest like facet that I've seen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe let me ask a clarifying question. So in this case, when you say academic rigor, what does that mean to you? Is there like some pressure that you feel either from your teachers?
Not just like pressure, just like academic rigor is not just like our studies, just like anything like maybe like doing an assignment or like staying out or like just like anything in general that like including like sports maybe or speech, like basically any club or any like opportunity at our school, like how they could balance between that and keeping a well like health and stuff like that.
Okay. And again, I will ask a follow-up question to that. Some of the things that you're describing, it's not mandatory. Am I right? And so a student makes the decision on what do they want to be a part of. But having said that, I think I will acknowledge we are in a world that is very competitive, right? And so I've been through that. My kids have been through that, so I can totally relate to what you're stating here, Sean. And I think that's where it's very, very important that we have, I guess, different avenues to make sure that students don't feel the pressure, and which might look like peer mentorships or having access to either your counselors or your mentors or your teachers at school that you can approach and, look for some additional support. So I think it will have to be a collective effort between students, teachers, and potentially even parents, right? It's not just limited to what happens within the boundaries or within the confines of the school, but as I think a collective set of stakeholders involved in the well-being of the student. I think we'll have to see like how could we have different options available to the student to make it easy.
That's a great transition actually to our second question in Sean's section.
So how would you make sure that students' voices are included in like school board decisions or like school board meetings?
I love how students are engaged right now, but I think we could definitely do more. And I will probably dive a little bit deeper into it. Like Ankita, probably, I don't know if we had the conversation before the interview started. I think some of these experiences that you all have right now through participating, in school board meetings and some of the other, civic engagement experiences, it sets you up for what you are going to be in the future. As future citizens of this community, of this state, of this country, of this you have to be ready for it. It's not something that you get to experience for the first time after you step out of your school. So I am definitely a strong advocate for ways in which students can play a bigger role, with the school board. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying that they necessarily become a board member. But what I would recommend is maybe we have a student advisory council, which is more formal. And the reason why I want to be a strong advocate for that is because everything that the board is doing and this community is doing is to serve our students. And so the voice of the students matter. And the reason why I said it needs to be a council and not an individual is because the council needs to be made up of students from different schools at different levels with varying experiences to be able to represent diverse voices, right? And so that is where I would definitely advocate for more student involvement in a more formal and structured fashion.
Amazing. Let me ask you guys this. Prior to this summer, when this project really took off and we had students engaging more with the school board, how familiar were you guys with the school board and how it operated and what it even does?
I personally just knew that there was a school board that helped with education and like various opportunities at our school, but I wasn't really know like who was running that school board or who the candidates were, or when even the election happened until like the school was at a spotlight introduced it to our school community.
Yeah. Do you feel like this is an area for continued growth?
Absolutely. And it's not just for the students. I think what the school board does is probably a bigger topic for the community in general. It would be, I think, really great if the community knows more about what school boards do and how can they engage with the school board to make their voices heard. I know when emails come and decisions are made as a parent, I know I felt frustrated. I don't necessarily agree with some of these decisions, but I think as a working mom with 2 kids who were involved in various activities, I don't think in the past I've had time to engage with the boards that in ways that I would have ideally wanted to. And so this is where I think it would really be meaningful to showcase what the school board does, what the students do, and how do they engage with the school board. I think we have to find ways to communicate that better to our communities.
Speaking along those lines, if a parent were to like disagree with the curriculum or to say anything in general that the school board makes a decision, how would you approach their disagreement or concerns?
I think the first step, Sean, I would say that needs to happen is to listen to what the parent is trying to say, right? We have to make sure we hear what their perspective is, and then try to see, and then try to look at what I think how other parents are feeling about it, what are our policies and what is data telling us. And I think we have to stitch it all together to address the concern before saying yay or nay to whatever the parent is saying. Because I think in general, to bring, I think you have to establish trust with people before you can make them understand why it is a decision that you necessarily do not agree with, or why it's a sentiment that you necessarily don't agree with. And that process starts with listening to the other individual, hearing out what their perspective is, and then explain to them why it maybe is not the right thing.
Amazing. That leads us to our last question in the section, and also Sean, question you just asked kind of goes into our last section, but that's all right. It's glad that we're kind of keeping this conversation two-way street. Let's move on to your last question.
So what steps would you take to improve mental health and support the well-being of students? We kind of touched on before.
This is a topic that's really close to my heart. So I think one of the things that I really want to advocate for is how do we normalize having conversations about mental health? I know today the school district at each of our buildings, we have mental health counselors. How many of you go to them? How many of you know when to go to them? So that is where I think I would really, really advocate for, additional resources, and additional, maybe even staff, and more than everything else, how do we spread the awareness around mental health issues? And it's not just with students, it's with parents, it's with the community. How do we all get collectively better at understanding the implications of not addressing mental health issues? I think in talking to students and my friends, I feel very strongly that there's still a stigma that's attached, to acknowledging that you as an individual have no mental health issues. And so I just want to see how can we spread more awareness, how can we allocate more resources so that conversations around mental health is normalized. We have more awareness, and students and teachers for that matter know when to seek help and get it.
Do you guys have any sort of insight into how your mental health journey or experience has been supported by the high school administration or any of the middle schools, elementary schools?
I had a friend last year whose grandma died, and she was really sad about it, but she didn't want to talk to her parents about it because she was like, if I bring it up, then my parents will feel really sad. So I feel like she got a really big support from the counselors because she went and talked to them and they helped her through it and helped her emotionally be strong about it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, more power to your friend. I wish that more students could do it. And yeah, that's a really great story. Yeah.
Amazing. And I think this is one of the few times where, the counselor system has actually been able to help the students in an effective and engaging way. Not to say that, they haven't helped any other person in the district or in the schools, but it is more of the minority in the sense that there are more students who don't feel supported than do feel supported. And I think that's what you're trying to say that we need to work on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if they're not, maybe I should ask a clarifying question here. When you say they're not supported, do you feel like they don't have access to teachers or they don't get the right response? What do you mean by that? Or do they just not know when to approach?
I think it's more so that we have the resources there.
Okay.
It's just that a lot of students don't feel like they can trust in the quality of the resources or the quality of the responses that they're getting. They might not feel like there's any follow-ups to what they're going through. I think from my experience, in the middle school, I once went to a counselor about an issue I was having at home, and we spoke maybe once or twice about it, and he said he would follow up and that we could have further discussions about it, and never got that follow-up. And I was in kind of a sort of vulnerable moment of my life at that point. So I didn't have the energy to reach back out again.
Yeah.
And so I really felt that it was the counselor's sort of job and responsibility to check in with me and to make sure that I was okay after all the things that I was sharing with them.
Yeah, I hear you. And without knowing the specifics of the situation, I wonder if it's because we don't have as many counselors to cater to, all of the school. I don't know. But this is where I think it would be really, really, valuable to see how can we have additional resources and maybe in this case, even maybe without going into the details, what does follow-up look like?
Yeah.
And how do you close the loop or how do you provide ongoing support? I think maybe it needs to be more structured that way.
Yeah, I think we as students would appreciate a lot more definition regarding the mental health training that our professionals have gone through and what are the sort of follow-ups that we could get from that. Rather than being forced to kind of reach out whenever we need help.
And it's not easy when you're in that situation, right? It's hard enough to acknowledge that you're going through something and ask for help. And yes, I can totally empathize with that.
Does anyone have anything else to add?
I remember when I was also in middle school, what I was going through stuff, and I was like hesitating to go to the counselor because I didn't feel like the counselor would actually be there when they were like do like what they were supposed to do. They probably would, but like it just felt like the counselors were making an effort to like tell the students like, oh yeah, like you can, if you're going through something, like we're here to help. But I feel like what they were saying wasn't enough for me to be like actually go to them. And when I did end up going to them, because one of my friends did push me to go, I feel like I also didn't get a follow up. I also didn't feel like they checked up, and I like didn't want to reach out again because I just wasn't in that moment. I just didn't.
As I hear about both of your experiences, the question that comes to mind is there any kind of feedback survey or any follow-up that you get from people other than the counselor just to learn about how your experience was?
Yeah, I mean, I know that the school does send out a survey
Okay.
quarterly asking, hey, how are we doing? What are the ways we can improve?
Oh, that's more like a generic survey.
It's
not
but they do
specific.
ask about the counselors and
Okay.
the student support teams.
Okay.
I'm sure some people do provide added feedback. It's
Okay.
just that we keep talking about change, but we don't actually really do anything about it. In my experience, seems like everyone here agrees as well. With mental health, it's so stigmatized yet also dual faceted in the sense that we keep talking about change and trying to like implement better mental health resources and creating more conversations, but there's only so much talking that we can do before we actually start fixing things and actually helping our students, right?
Yeah, and I think in my head at least, it goes back to, do we have enough resources to support the needs of our students? Yeah, and so I would say this needs to be continued investment, and it needs to be a high enough priority to make sure that we provide the students with what they need, because it's not just about physical well-being, but it is also that mental and emotional well-being as they get ready to face the world.
Amazing. Well, that was a really great conversation about mental health. I don't think we've had any interview that's really focused on that as much, and it is important. I'm really glad that we all have experiences that can contribute to its ongoing life. With that, let's transition to our last section on community and governance.
What personal or professional experiences prepare you to contribute to guiding our district's future?
Personally, as I said, I grew up in an environment where my parents were teachers and educators. My life was transformed by my ninth grade teachers, if I were to be specific. My teachers not only sparked my love for learning, but as I mentioned earlier, they also, shaped my thinking about how to stand up for what's right. I've seen teachers for my boys do the same. My older son went to Plymouth Creek, Oakwood, Kimberly Lane, CMS, and graduated out of Wayzata High, and my younger one went to Bright Star, Kimberly Lane, CMS, and now a freshman at Wayzata High. So I have seen them also, have the same experience. And so I think I have that respect for teachers. And outside of, the growing up years and what I have experienced with my boys, I have also been a volunteer over the years. I have been a class parent. I have been a judge for DECA state districts. I have been a parent volunteer at YIG and MUN. And outside of all this, I have been teaching faith formation at our local church for the last 10 years. So I think all of this just continues to, reinforce my perspectives about what teachers do for the community. And I also have I have more than 15 years of experience in corporate America, leading teams that are diverse, that are global. And as I shared earlier, I have been an advocate for equity, inclusion, and I've built teams, with inclusive cultures. I have led teams, and I continue to lead teams, through changes. It's been like we are working through and adjusting to, what AI is bringing to our world. So I have had a blend of, personal experiences, as well as professional experiences that actually have prepared me over a lifetime for this role that I am actually wanting to, get elected to. And so I would say some of these values and beliefs that I've been talking about, they are like non-negotiables for someone who needs to be a part of the board.
Amazing. What are some like ways that you want to like support teachers or help them out?
Yeah, I want to advocate for programs that similar to how we were talking about students. I want to advocate for programs that will allow teachers to be more ready or prepared to change or to adapt to the evolving ways of learning and teaching. I want to make sure that I advocate for programs that can help them with balancing their life. Because I think they also face some of the challenges that we talked about for students. So how do we make sure that we give them access to resources that allows them to be successful in their roles? So I guess resources that allow them to advance professionally, but also, balance their well-being.
I think we can end on a second question in your section, just because I feel like we've addressed the third one about how to address the community being divided on tough decisions. That did come up earlier. So
How would you keep parents, students, and staff informed and engaged in board decisions?
This is a question I'm very passionate about. It goes back to my own experience, right? I feel like the ways that we engage currently with parents and community, we're still following very traditional ways. We talked about equity for students. Can we now talk about equity for parents and community? Parents don't respond to the communication, forms that we have today the same way. As a working mom, as kids who were involved in various activities, I really didn't have time to go through emails or be a part of 2-hour-long meetings or even watch it virtually, right? Although I wanted to be very much involved in what was going on. So how can we make sure we understand what the needs of the parents are? What would resonate with them? Identify their preferences of how they would want to learn more about what's happening with the board, with the school district and the community, and kind of adopt different ways to communicate and provide updates, to parents. Some people like, Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts. I don't know. But there are others who like going through emails and going through all the details. There are others who don't want to interact digitally and want to be there in person. So I guess what I would say is it's not one size fits all. It's about time we acknowledge that people have different preferences, people have different ways of engaging, and so we really need to find ways to get to them. We shouldn't be expecting, like with everything else in the world, we shouldn't be expecting people to come to us, but like, how do we go to them and share out what's going on and get them more engaged?
Yeah. I'm the oldest child in my family, so I'm going to be the first one to go into high school.
Yes.
Something that my parents are like scared of is like they don't have enough information. They feel like they're scared. They're like, oh, how's high school going to be? How can I support my child? So I feel like that's also something that I wish that school would like set more emails or send more like meetings for like parents who are wondering about how high school is going to work for their child.
Yes,
So that's really important to me as well.
yes, absolutely.
Do either of you feel like you've been in the lead in your high school journey so far?
Especially due to our like neighbors and like people we know. I feel like it's been, but there is some like work to do to like make sure that parents are like get the knowledge or like what is happening at our school building and what is like decisions are being made. Like
Yeah, one of the other things that I would say that I have experienced as a parent too is the overload of emails. Again, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's probably something that definitely resonates with some parents. But for me, as again, with the busy schedules I've had, I would get buried in the emails. And then all of a sudden, one day my son would ask me, Mom, how about this? Did you do it? And I'm like, what? Again, I'm not, trying to put the blame on somebody else. It's just that I think we have to acknowledge that parents and people are at different places in their lives. And so how can we reach, with adopting whatever is the best way to reach out to that parent? What is the best way to, what channel is the best channel for that person?
So it goes back to that equity piece. What works for one parent might not for another.
Yes, absolutely.
Amazing. Well, thank you. That brings us to our final few minutes. For our closing, we'll take questions submitted directly from the community who are watching us live on Facebook and Instagram. Let's start with our first question. We have quite a few this time.
Okay, well,
All right. What is the first change you would implement after being elected?
great question. I think what I want to say is what I can advocate for, because we have to remember, if elected, I would be one of 7 board members. And whatever decisions, and the other thing is like whatever decisions get made, it is based on, the majority decision of the board. I would definitely, as I mentioned, my priority would be students first. What can we do to beef up the safety, physical, mental, cyber safety technology? I'm really passionate about that too. It's interesting that I work with technology really closely, but I definitely worry about this, the safety component of it as technology advances. So I would say that I really want to focus on what can we do better to make our students safer.
Great. Our second question for you is, what is the most important role of being on the school board to you? You can kind of workshop that a little bit. I think to kind of rephrase that to be a little bit more grammatically correct, I would say, what is the most important part of being on the school board if you were elected? Like, what is the most important part of that position?
I would say it's listening to the community and representing the community, and being, and making sure that we are advocating for the voices of our stakeholders, which is students, teachers, and the community.
Our third question from another student is, what is a priority to you and how do you plan to address and problem solve it? I think you can use this as an opportunity to delve more into your cybersecurity interest or something else that you haven't delved into as much yet.
I would actually go after the mental health one, which we probably talked about at length. I would love, especially I think given what's been happening around us recently, I would definitely want to see how can we work on allocating more resources, how can we work on educating our students, our teachers, our parents, how can we normalize conversations around mental health? Because without addressing some of those root cause problems, everything else at that point feels like a band-aid solution.
For our last question, do you plan to have representation with teachers in the district on the board too? And if so, how would you go about doing that?
Yeah, I think I talked about it earlier when I talked about my SAFE priorities, right? The A within SAFE was advancing teachers, which is championing, the teachers' needs, whether it is respect to how do they develop them professionally, how can they advance their skill sets, or how can they get more support to maintain their well-being, maintain that balance between work and their personal lives, and be, more ready to inspire and support our students and get them ready for the world of tomorrow.
Well, thank you, Julie, for joining us today. And thank you to our student interviewers and all of our students, community members, parents, staff who tuned in live on our Google Meet. On behalf of Wayzata School Board Spotlight, we appreciate your time and willingness to engage directly with students. Our goal is to make this election as accessible and meaningful to the whole community as possible, and conversations like this are an important part of that work. Please look forward to our future candidate interviews and fill out our Pledge to Engage form linked in our Instagram bio to stay connected and involved in this election. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.